We're going to use the foam roller next to do some myofascial release of our groins. So we're in this position, and we're going to start just on the outer third of the thigh. Then you'll move to the middle third and kind of trying to rotate here a little bit to get different portions of the muscle. And then you'll come in and get the inner third. And you don't have to go too fast. Just nice steady tempo. This is how you use the foam roller to do some myofascial release on your hip flexors. So first, find your hip flexor bundle, and a good way to do that is just by lifting up your leg. So then and putting your hand in the crease of your hip, you can feel it sort of flex and pop out. That's what you're going for. Then you're staying below your hip bone, and you're just rolling forward and back. And again, rotate your hips a bit, get different aspects of the front of your hip. So we're going to roll on the outside on our lateral thigh, and we're really going to keep a little bit more to the front border and the rear border of what's called the iliotibial band. So that's a really thick connective tissue that runs along the outside of your thigh, and the smart people say that it is so dense that you really can't roll it out. So we kind of target a little more where it blends into the quadriceps in the front and where it blends into the hamstrings in the back. See how I'm using this foot to offload a little bit of the pressure? That's good to start because it can be really, really tender to start with. But then once you kind of get used to it after a few weeks, you'll find that it feels just fine to come forward. So just nice steady pace, doesn't have to be fast, just rolling through there. And if you find a little trigger point or a knot, you can sit on it until it kind of dissipates and then keep moving along. This is how you use the foam roll for some myofascial release on your lats. So we're looking at the posterior part of the shoulder below the arm, so we're not getting up onto our arm at all. We're really just going from the back side of your armpit down. So straighten that arm and then roll from the shoulder joint down. And again, I'll change my angle to target different areas. Don't really want to get up on my shoulder blade. When you do the elevated hip flexor and reach, you're going to line up at about a 45-degree angle to the step. But then your foot and your hips are going to come square so that this leg is in a little bit of internal rotation. So my shoulders, my hips, my foot are square to the step. This leg is at about a 45-degree angle. And then I'm just going to reach straight up. So I squeeze my bum together, bring my hips forward to feel a stretch here, and then increase that stretch by reaching straight up to the ceiling. The half kneeling groin stretch, it just means half kneeling, just one knee down, my other leg's out to the side. I'm keeping a good flat back position, and I'm sitting back in the hips. I particularly feel a stretch on this side, but I actually do feel a little bit of stretch on this side as well. Just don't round your back as you do that. Keep a neutral back and just sit your hips down. When you do the pretzel stretch, you're going to start with just a typical glute stretch pattern, but then you're going to reach up with this hand and grab this foot, and you're going to reach underneath with your other hand and grab your other foot. And then I'm using the hip flexors on this side to actually pull this knee up, which is going to give me more stretch on my left glute. So I'm using the muscles in the front of this hip to help me stretch the muscles in the back of the opposite hip. So this is one of those exercises that looks like nothing, but it actually is an exercise, I promise. What we're trying to work on is hip flexor activation, so trying to get that deep hip flexor working Make sure that it sort of turns on properly. So we're going to push this leg into the floor a little bit as we bring this knee up towards our chest as high as we can go. So what we don't want is to kind of round our back as we go, and a telltale sign of that will probably be this knee coming off the floor. So we keep this down, we pull this up, we're using the muscles in the front of our hip to pull it up as high as we can actively, not pulling as hard as you can, you know, about 30%, but we're going to pull like that, and then we'll bring it down and switch sides, again pushing this knee down and pulling this knee up, just using the muscles in the front of your hip. Sometimes athletes in the gym, they'll like grab it with their leg to help, with their arms to help a bit, but you want to just use your hip flexors. When you do the walking knee hug, you want to stay nice and tall in your torso. One hand's on the outside of your ankle, one hand's on the inside of your knee. You're going to stay nice and tall, so don't let your chest round over. The walking quad stretch, we just reach with the opposite hand straight up to the ceiling. We bring this knee right down beside. Don't let it flare out. So it gives us a chance to stretch our quadriceps, but also work a little on our dynamic balance. So this is your walking leg cradle. So just putting one hand on the outside of your knee, one hand on your foot. So it's not a twist in the knee, it's just a cradle and then a lift straight up. Take one step, a cradle, and a lift straight up, staying tall in your torso. I really like this one because it gives you a chance to dynamically lengthen your groins, but then make a little quick reactive movement. So it's down and back, and then just a nice speedy shuffle. Make sure you remember to do that facing each direction. There's a high kick into an inverted reach. So it's a great dynamic stretch for your hamstrings. Big thing with this, when you kick up with that leg, again, don't let your back round. So only kick as high as you can without rounding your back. For the Spider-Man, you're going to come down into this position with your hands on the inside, your foot on the outside. So really opening up your hips that way. Then you're going to shift the weight onto this front leg, pick up the back foot, keep your hips quite low, walk your hands forward, and then bring this foot up again just outside your hands. Again, shift that weight, pick up the back toe, and take your next step. Don't let the back toe drag along the floor as you do that. So we're going to bring our elbow toward our instep, or toward the inside of our knee, keeping the back leg straight. I'm trying to keep my torso as straight as I can. Then I'll come back to a hamstring, and then get a hip flexor, and then step through to my next repetition.